The carriage door swung open, and Duke Adrian Thornvale felt his entire strategy collapse in real time. This wasn't supposed to happen. The woman descending onto the frost-cracked stones of Blackridge Vale wasn't meek, wasn't forgettable. She moved like someone who'd survived things that would have buried him, and her eyes, sharp, unflinching, locked onto his with a challenge he hadn't expected and definitely hadn't prepared for. Elena Viremont, his arranged bride, his calculated solution. Except nothing about her was calculated, and everything about this felt like walking into a trap he'd set for himself. Behind her polished exterior, he saw it, the shadow of something hunting her, and in that split second, Adrian knew this marriage wasn't going to save anything. It was going to detonate everything he thought he understood about control, safety, and what he was actually willing to fight for. If you want to see how far this story reaches, drop a comment with your city below. Hit that like button. Let's go. The wind off the northern cliffs always carried a bite, even in late spring. Adrian stood at the top of the stone steps leading to Blackridge's main hall, hands clasped behind his back, jaw tight enough to ache. He'd been standing there for 20 minutes, waiting, which he hated. Waiting meant uncertainty, and uncertainty was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Your Grace, the carriage has been sighted," Gareth said from somewhere behind him. His steward, loyal, competent, currently very unnecessary. "I'm aware." Adrian didn't turn around. Gareth hesitated. "Shall I have the staff assembled for formal—" "No." Silence. Then the crunch of boots retreating across gravel. Smart man. Adrian exhaled slowly, watching the road that carved through the valley below. Somewhere down there, rattling over stones and through mud, was a woman he'd never met. A woman who, in less than a week, would carry his name, bear his children, manage his household. A woman chosen by advisors, vetted by contracts, delivered like cargo, because that's how these things worked when you were a duke with responsibilities that outweighed desires. He'd seen her portrait, pale, soft-featured, unremarkable. The artist had probably been generous. Her family, minor nobility from the eastern provinces, had been eager, desperate even. Financial trouble from what his solicitors uncovered. A daughter past prime marrying age. It was a clean transaction. She needed security. He needed an heir and someone to manage the social machinery he had no patience for. Simple. Except nothing about this felt simple. Adrian's fingers drummed against his thigh, a tell he'd trained himself out of years ago. It crept back when his instincts screamed warnings his logic couldn't articulate. Something about this arrangement sat wrong. Not the marriage itself, he'd accepted that necessity long ago. But the speed, the insistence from his cousin, Lord Pemberton, who'd brokered the match. The way every inquiry he'd made had been met with smooth reassurances and deflections. "She's perfect for you, Adrian. Quiet, obedient, won't interfere with your work." He didn't want perfect. He wanted functional. There was a difference. The carriage crested the final hill, black lacquer gleaming dully under cloud-filtered sunlight. 2 horses. Single driver. No escort. Either confidence or stupidity. Adrian straightened, rolling his shoulders back. Game face. The mask he wore for treaty negotiations and territorial disputes, polite, distant, unreadable. The carriage slowed. Stopped. The driver, an older man with a face like weathered granite, climbed down and opened the door without ceremony. Adrian waited. A gloved hand emerged first, gripping the frame. Then a boot, practical leather, not the delicate silk slippers he'd expected. And then she stepped down, and every assumption Adrian had constructed shattered like glass under a hammer. Elena Viremont was not unremarkable. She was tall, taller than the portrait suggested, with a frame that carried strength rather than fragility. Dark hair pulled back severely, revealing a face that was all sharp angles and deliberate composure. No soft features, no demure, downcast eyes. She looked at Blackridge Vale the way a general surveyed a battlefield, cataloging exits, assessing threats, calculating advantage. And then she looked at him. Adrian felt the impact of that gaze like a physical blow. Not hostile, not warm, just aware. Like she was reading him the same way he was reading her and finding the exercise equally unsettling. Duke Thornvale. Her voice was lower than he'd expected, controlled, no tremor of nerves or excitement. "Miss Viremont." He descended the steps, stopping at a distance that felt strategic rather than polite. "Welcome to Blackridge." "Thank you." She didn't smile, didn't curtsy, just stood there, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that felt almost aggressive. "It's larger than I anticipated. Most people find it imposing." I said larger, not imposing. The correction was so swift, so unbothered, that Adrian almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, reassessing. "The staff will show you to your quarters. Dinner's at 8. We can discuss arrangements then." "Arrangements?" She repeated the word like she was testing its weight. "Yes. I suppose we should." Something in her tone, dry, nearly sardonic, tripped another alarm. This wasn't a grateful refugee fleeing financial ruin. This was someone playing a part, same as him, and not particularly committed to the performance. "Unless you'd prefer to rest first," Adrian added, almost as a test. Elena's lips curved, not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement of a move in chess. "I don't tire easily, Your Grace. 8 o'clock will be fine." She moved past him then, toward the entrance, and Adrian caught it, just for a second, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes swept the courtyard, the windows, the tree line beyond, not admiring the view, searching for something, or watching for someone. Gareth appeared at his elbow as Elena disappeared inside. "She's not what the reports indicated." "No." Adrian stared at the empty doorway. "She's not." "Shall I make inquiries?" Discreetly. He turned, heading toward his study. "And Gareth? Double the perimeter watch tonight." "You're expecting trouble?" Adrian paused. "I'm expecting variables I don't understand yet, which is the same thing." Dinner was a study in controlled warfare. Elena arrived exactly at 8, dressed in deep burgundy that should have looked funereal, but instead made her look like she was preparing for battle. She took the seat across from Adrian without waiting for instruction, unfolding her napkin with precision. "Your staff is efficient," she said as the first course arrived. "I've been here 4 hours and already feel thoroughly inventoried." Adrian cut into his fish. "They're protective. This estate doesn't see many outsiders. And I'm an outsider." "You are. For now." He looked up. She was watching him again, that unnerving directness that felt like being dissected. "What were you told about me?" he asked. The question seemed to catch her off guard, but only for a heartbeat. That you were practical, ambitious, uninterested in sentiment. She took a sip of wine. That this marriage was a formality you'd approach with the same enthusiasm as livestock procurement. Adrian's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Livestock procurement. Their words, not mine. And yet you came anyway. Elena set down her glass with a soft click. I had compelling reasons. Financial. Among others. The evasion was too smooth, too practiced. Adrian leaned back, studying her. "What were you told about me?" Truthfully. She held his gaze for a long moment, something flickering behind the composure. Calculation, maybe, or just exhaustion. That you were cold, consumed by duty. That you'd leave me alone if I stayed out of your way. Her voice dropped, just slightly. That this was the safest option available to me. Safest from what? The question hung between them like a blade. Elena's jaw tightened. Does it matter? If it's going to show up at my doorstep? Yes. She laughed then, a short, bitter sound that had no humor in it. You're more perceptive than they said. They lied to you. It wasn't a question. Yes. No hesitation. And they lied to you. Adrian set down his silverware carefully. Explain. I'm not... She stopped, recalibrating. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, harder. I'm not what your cousin described. I'm not meek. I'm not grateful. I'm not here because I'm desperate for a title or security or whatever story Pemberton sold you. She met his eyes. I'm here because a very dangerous man believes he has a claim on me, and this marriage was supposed to make me untouchable. The room felt suddenly smaller. A claim, Adrian repeated slowly. Lord Cassian Hargrave, Eastern Territories, wealthy, Connected, obsessive. Each word was clipped, precise. We were engaged, briefly. I ended it when I realized what he was. She paused. He didn't accept that ending. Adrian's mind was already moving, cataloging implications. Hargrave. He knew the name. Old money. Rumors of cruelty. Nothing proven, but whispers loud enough to be credible. And your family's solution was to marry you off before he could… What? Object? Before he could make good on his threats. Yes. What kind of threats? Elena's composure cracked, just slightly, a tightening around her eyes, a breath held too long. The kind that don't leave room for misinterpretation. Adrian stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, darkness had swallowed the valley. Blackridge's lights were pinpricks against the void. His sanctuary. His controlled environment. And now apparently the stage for someone else's nightmare. Why didn't Pemberton tell me this? Because he knew you'd refuse. Elena's voice came from behind him, closer than expected. She'd stood too, moved silently. Hargrave is powerful. Confronting him carries risk. Your cousin gambled that you wouldn't find out until after the wedding. Once it was legal, once I carried your name, Hargrave would have to back down or risk open conflict with a duke. She paused. It was supposed to be clean, strategic, no actual danger to you. Adrian turned. She was 3 feet away, arms crossed, chin up, defiant. But he could see it now. The fear she was working so hard to bury. Supposed to be. I didn't expect him to follow me here. The words dropped like stones into water. He's here? Adrian's voice went very quiet, dangerously quiet. Not yet, but he will be. Elena's hands clenched. He won't let this stand, and when he comes, Adrian interrupted, he'll find that Blackridge Vale isn't the eastern provinces, and I'm not some minor lord who'll fold under pressure. She stared at him. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then explain it to me. The silence stretched, then, quietly, he broke a servant's arm for serving me tea incorrectly. He had a stable boy whipped for looking at me too long. He told me… Her voice wavered, just barely. He told me that if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I understood that I belonged to him, that no one else would ever want what was left. Adrian felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. Not fear, recognition. He'd seen men like Hargrave before, predators who mistook power for permission. And you believed he'd follow through? I watched him follow through, on others. She straightened. I'm not asking for your protection out of weakness, Your Grace. I'm warning you what you've walked into by agreeing to this marriage. If you want to annul… No! The word came out harder than he'd intended. Elena blinked. I don't run from threats, Adrian said quietly. And I don't abandon arrangements because they're inconvenient. He stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, the exhaustion she was hiding. You're here. We have a contract. That makes you my responsibility, which means Hargrave just became mine too. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. He held her gaze. If he comes here, he'll learn very quickly that Blackridge operates under different rules than whatever playhouse he's been ruling. You're not his, you're not anyone's, and if he wants to challenge that… Adrian's voice dropped to something edged and final. I'll be happy to educate him. Elena's breath caught. For a moment, the mask slipped completely, and he saw it, raw. Undisguised hope warring with disbelief, like she'd forgotten what it felt like when someone chose to stand rather than retreat. Why? She whispered. You barely know me. This isn't your fight. You made it my fight the moment you stepped off that carriage. Adrian stepped back, giving her space, reestablishing the professional distance even as something fundamental had shifted. Besides, I don't like being lied to, and I really don't like bullies. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob, quickly suppressed. She wiped at her eyes impatiently, angry at the display. I'm not usually… I know. You don't know anything about me. I know you're still standing, Adrian said simply. After everything he put you through, that's enough for now. Elena looked at him for a long moment, something reshuffling behind her eyes. calculations, assessments, maybe the first tentative framework of trust. What do? We prepare properly. Adrian moved toward the door. Gareth? His steward appeared immediately. Too immediately. Definitely been listening. I need updated intelligence on Lord Cassian Hargrave. Everything. Holdings, debts, alliances, scandals, especially scandals. I want to know every skeleton in his closet and where the bodies are buried. He glanced at Elena. Metaphorically or otherwise. Gareth's expression didn't change, but his posture sharpened. Anticipated timeline? He could arrive tomorrow. I want everything within 12 hours. Understood. Gareth vanished. Elena was staring. You're serious? Did you think I wasn't? I thought. She stopped, recalibrating. Most men would have called this my problem, told me to handle it quietly. Most men are idiots. Adrian crossed to his desk, pulling out maps of the estate. If Hargrave's as unhinged as you say, he won't come alone. He'll bring leverage, witnesses, maybe muscle if he's truly desperate. He marked positions on the map. Our advantage is terrain and preparation. Blackridge is defensible. We control access, supplies, information flow. Elena moved closer, studying the map. You're planning for siege. I'm planning for variables. If he comes diplomatic, we handle it legally. If he comes aggressive, Adrian met her eyes. We handle it differently. You could still back out, annul before the wedding. You'd have no legal obligation to keep. Stop. The word was gentle, but firm. I'm not your enemy, Elena, and I'm not going to become Hargrave's ally just to avoid inconvenience. He straightened. We move forward. The wedding happens as planned, and if he wants to object, he can do it through proper channels or not at all. She was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then, you realize this could get ugly. I'm counting on it. Adrian's smile was thin, sharp. I don't lose, Miss Viremont, and I especially don't lose on my own territory to men who think intimidation is strategy. He's dangerous. So am I. He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might comment on the weather. The difference is, I'm dangerous when I need to be. He's dangerous because he enjoys it. That's a weakness. Elena studied him, really studied him, like she was seeing him for the first time. You're not what I expected either. Good. We'll both keep surprising each other. Adrian rolled up the maps. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start turning this estate into something Hargrave will regret approaching. She nodded, moving toward the door, then stopped. Adrian? It was the first time she'd used his name. It landed differently than Your Grace. Thank you. The words were quiet, almost lost. For choosing this. Thank you for being honest. He met her eyes. Finally, a real smile flickered across her face, brief but genuine. Finally, she echoed, and then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone with maps and strategies and the cold certainty that everything was about to accelerate in ways he couldn't fully control. But control was overrated anyway. He'd take effective over controlled any day. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Gareth brought it directly to Adrian's study, his face carefully neutral in that way that meant trouble. Courier delivered this an hour ago. Hargrave's seal. Adrian broke the wax without ceremony, scanning the contents. Formal, flowery, utterly venomous beneath the polish. My dear Duke Thornvale, it has come to my attention that a misunderstanding has led to an inappropriate arrangement between yourself and Miss Elena Viremont. As I'm sure you're unaware, Miss Viremont and I share a prior understanding, one that supersedes any recent agreements made in haste or desperation. I'm certain that, as a man of honor, you'll wish to rectify this situation promptly. I shall arrive at Blackridge Vale in 2 days' time to retrieve my betrothed and resolve any confusion. Your cooperation in this delicate matter will be remembered favorably. Yours in anticipated understanding, Lord Cassian Hargrave. Adrian read it twice, his expression unchanging. Then he handed it to Gareth. Thoughts? Gareth's jaw tightened as he read. Arrogant bastard. Concise? Accurate. Adrian leaned back. 2 days. He's giving us time to panic. Or prepare. He doesn't think we need to prepare. He thinks we'll fold. Adrian tapped the desk. Where's Elena? Library, reading estate management records? Of course she was. Adrian stood. Get the senior staff together and send word to Captain Merrick. I want the guard doubled and rotations adjusted for high alert protocol. You're expecting violence? I'm expecting theater. Adrian moved toward the door. But theater can turn violent fast if the lead actor is unstable enough. He found Elena exactly where Gareth said, surrounded by ledgers, making notes in precise handwriting. She looked up as he entered, immediately reading his expression. He's coming. Adrian nodded, handing her the letter. She read it in silence, her face going carefully blank. When she finished, she set it down with deliberate care. 2 days. Yes. He's going to make a scene. Public, messy, force your hand. That's his plan. Elena's hands clenched on the desk. You could still... If you suggest I back down one more time, I'm going to start taking it personally. Adrian pulled up a chair sitting across from her. Listen to me. I've dealt with territorial disputes, trade wars, and political backstabbing that would make Hargrave look like an amateur. I don't fold. I don't compromise when I'm right. And I sure as hell don't hand over people under my protection because someone shows up with entitlement issues. This isn't politics, Adrian. This is personal for him. Then he's already lost. Adrian leaned forward. Personal means emotional. Emotional means mistakes. We stay cold, strategic, and 3 steps ahead. That's how we win. And if he doesn't care about winning, if he just wants to destroy, then we make sure he destroys himself in the process. Adrian's voice hardened. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Elena met his eyes, searching. Whatever she found there seemed to settle something. Yes, I can trust you. Good. He stood. Then let's make sure when Hargrave arrives, he finds something very different from what he's expecting. What's that? Adrian's smile was predatory. A united front, and absolutely no fear. Elena squaring her shoulders. That fragile hope from before had crystallized into something harder, sharper, determination. Then let's give him a show he'll never forget. That's the spirit. Adrian offered his arm. Come on, we have a wedding to accelerate and a siege to prepare for. Accelerate? If we're married before he arrives, his legal standing evaporates. It's not about winning an argument. It's about eliminating the battlefield entirely. Elena stared. You want to marry me in 2 days? I want to marry you tomorrow. Adrian's gaze was steady. Unless you object. She hesitated, but not from fear, from the sheer audacity of it. Then slowly, she placed her hand on his arm. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow, Adrian agreed. And somewhere in the valley below, a storm was already forming. But inside Black Ridge Vale, the pieces were moving into position. Hargrave thought he was hunting prey. He was about to learn he'd stumbled into the territory of something far more dangerous. The chapel at Black Ridge hadn't seen a wedding in 17 years. Adrian remembered the last one, his uncle's second marriage, a grand affair with 300 guests and enough flowers to choke a greenhouse. This was going to be nothing like that. You're certain about this? Father Donnelly looked between Adrian and Elena, his weathered face creased with concern. The old priest had served the estate for decades, baptized Adrian as an infant, and apparently had no problem questioning a duke when the situation warranted. Marriage is a sacred covenant, not a strategic maneuver. It's both, Adrian said flatly. Can you perform the ceremony by noon tomorrow or not? Donnelly's mouth thinned. I can. Whether I should is another question entirely. Elena stepped forward, her voice calm. Father, I understand your hesitation, but I'm entering this willingly, with full awareness of what it means. She glanced at Adrian. We're not children playing at romance. We're adults making a practical choice under difficult circumstances. Practical. Donnelly repeated the word like it tasted bitter. That's not typically how I describe unions blessed before. Then describe it however you need to, Adrian interrupted. But make it legal, make it binding, and make it happen tomorrow. The priest studied them both for a long moment, then sighed. Noon. But I want witnesses, at least 3. And you'll both meet with me for an hour beforehand. Non-negotiable. Fine. Adrian was already moving toward the door. Thank you, Father. Don't thank me yet, Donnelly called after them. I'm going to ask you questions you won't like. Outside, the courtyard was a controlled chaos of preparation. Captain Merrick, a compact, iron-haired woman who'd served in 3 border wars before retiring to Blackridge, was barking orders at the guard. Additional men were being pulled from the outer farms, weapons checked, rotations adjusted. Merrick spotted Adrian and strode over, her boots striking stone like hammer blows. Your Grace, we're as ready as we're going to be on short notice. But I want to be clear, if Hargrave brings a force, we're looking at an ugly confrontation. He won't bring a force, Elena said quietly. Both Adrian and Merrick turned to her. She was staring at the main gate, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild weather. He'll bring witnesses, important ones, people who matter socially. He wants this public because public humiliation is half the point. Merrick's eyes narrowed. You know him well enough to predict him, usually. Elena's jaw tightened. He'll arrive with just enough people to create spectacle, but not enough to seem aggressive. He'll be charming at first, reasonable. He'll frame this as a misunderstanding between gentlemen. She looked at Adrian, and when you don't bend, that's when the mask comes off. Adrian absorbed this, recalculating. So we're not preparing for an invasion. We're preparing for theater that might turn violent if he doesn't get his way. Exactly, Merrick grunted. I've dealt with that type before. Officers who thought rank meant they could do whatever they wanted. Her hand rested on her sword hilt. They learn different, usually painfully. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Adrian said, though his tone suggested he wasn't particularly optimistic. But Merrick, I want your best people positioned where they can respond fast if needed, not visible, but ready. Already done. Merrick nodded to Elena with something like respect. Ma'am, if you don't mind my saying, you've got good tactical instincts. Elena's smile was thin. Survival teaches you to think several moves ahead, Captain. After Merrick left, Adrian and Elena stood in the courtyard as the afternoon light slanted long across the stones. Around them, the estate hummed with purposeful activity, but here in this small pocket of space, there was something almost peaceful about the quiet between them. You're afraid, Adrian said. Not a question. Elena didn't deny it. Yes. Of him? Or of this? He gestured vaguely at the chapel, the preparations, the approaching collision. Both. Neither. She exhaled slowly. I'm afraid that even if we win tomorrow, he'll find another way, another angle. Cassian doesn't accept defeat. He just repositions and tries again. Her hands clenched. I've seen him do it. To business rivals, to people who embarrassed him. He's patient when he wants to be. Then we make sure tomorrow isn't just a defeat, Adrian said. We make it definitive enough that repositioning becomes impossible. How? I don't know yet. The admission came easier than he'd expected. But I'm working on it. Elena turned to face him fully. Why are you doing this, really? You could have sent me away the moment I told you about Cassian. Cut your losses, avoided the mess entirely. Instead, you're accelerating the wedding, fortifying your estate, preparing for confrontation with a man you've never met. She searched his face. Why? Adrian was quiet for a moment, considering the question properly. You want the tactical answer or the honest one? Both. Tactically, backing down would signal weakness. Every noble with a grudge or territorial ambition would see Blackridge as negotiable. I can't afford that. Well, he paused. Honestly, I don't like what you described. The threats, the possessiveness, the violence masquerading as passion. I've seen that dynamic before. Men who think power gives them ownership of people. It doesn't, and someone needs to make that clear to Hargrave. That someone being you. Apparently, Lena's expression shifted, something fragile and fierce surfacing simultaneously. You're either very brave or very stupid. Most great decisions involve both. Adrian's mouth quirked. Come on, we should get some rest before tomorrow's chaos. But neither of them moved. The moment stretched, weighted with awareness of what they were walking into. Not just a wedding, but a commitment made under fire. A partnership forged from necessity that was rapidly becoming something more complicated. Adrian? Elena's voice was softer now. After tomorrow, after we're married, what happens? Do we just continue this performance indefinitely? I don't know, he said honestly. I've never been good at pretending. Eventually we'll have to figure out what this actually is. He met her eyes. But that's a problem for after we survive the next 48 hours. Fair enough. She smiled, a real one this time, reaching her eyes. One catastrophe at a time. Exactly. They walked back toward the main hall together, not touching but close enough that their shadows merged on the stones. Behind them, the sun was setting over Blackridge's cliffs, painting everything in shades of amber and blood red. Tomorrow was going to be a disaster. Adrian was almost looking forward to it. Bam! Morning arrived too fast and too slow simultaneously. Adrian had managed maybe 3 hours of sleep, his mind churning through scenarios and contingencies until exhaustion finally dragged him under. He woke before dawn, dressed in formal attire that felt like armor, and went to check defensive positions one more time. Gareth found him inspecting the main gate just after sunrise. Your Grace, you're supposed to be meeting with Father Donnelly in an hour. I know. You look like you're preparing for battle, not a wedding. Same thing today. Adrian turned from the gate. Any word from our scouts? Nothing yet. If Hargrave's traveling by carriage, he won't arrive before mid-afternoon at earliest. Gareth hesitated. The staff is asking what they should prepare. Wedding breakfast? Reception? Keep it simple. This isn't a celebration. It's a legal formality that happens to involve vows. Adrian started toward the chapel. Is Elena awake? Has been for hours, apparently. Mrs. Calloway said she heard pacing in the east wing around 4. Adrian wasn't surprised. He found Elena in the small sacristy attached to the chapel, staring at the simple white dress Mrs. Calloway must have hastily altered. It wasn't elaborate, high-necked, long-sleeved, practical, but on Elena it would look right, suited to someone who valued function over flash. She didn't turn when he entered. I keep thinking I should be more nervous about the wedding itself, but all I can think about is what comes after. Same. Adrian leaned against the doorframe. Donnelly's going to interrogate us in about 45 minutes. We should probably get our story straight. Our story. Elena finally turned, her smile wry. What's our story, Adrian? That we're two people who barely know each other, binding ourselves legally because a madman is obsessed with me and you're too stubborn to back down? That's the truth. Donnelly respects truth. He respects love and commitment. We have neither. We have honesty and mutual respect. That's more than a lot of marriages start with. Adrian crossed to where she stood. Look, I'm not going to pretend this is conventional, but it's real. We're not lying to each other. We both know exactly what this is. A tactical alliance. A partnership, he corrected gently. One where we've both chosen to stand instead of run. That counts for something. Elena studied him, then nodded slowly. All right. Partnership. I can work with that. Father Donnelly's interrogation was exactly as uncomfortable as promised. He sat them down in his small office and proceeded to ask questions clearly designed to expose cracks in their foundation. Do you love each other? No, they answered simultaneously. At least they were honest. Donnelly's eyebrows rose. Do you respect each other? Yes, Adrian said. Elena nodded. Do you understand that marriage is not a contract you can dissolve when it becomes inconvenient? We do, Elena said firmly. Neither of us enters this lightly, Father. We understand the permanence. And children? Have you discussed? Eventually, Adrian cut in, when circumstances are more stable. Donnelly leaned back, steepling his fingers. I've married dozens of couples in my years here. Some married for love, some for duty, some for complicated reasons they couldn't or wouldn't explain. His gaze sharpened, but I've never married two people who seemed so determined to treat it like a military operation. Would you prefer we lie? Adrian asked bluntly. Pretend at emotions we don't have yet? Yet? Donnelly latched onto the word. You think love might develop? Adrian glanced at Elena. She was watching him with that assessing look again. I think, he said carefully, that we're both intelligent enough to recognize that partnerships built on honesty have more potential than ones built on illusions. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Donnelly sighed heavily. Elena, do you consent to this marriage freely, without coercion or fear? I consent freely, Elena said without hesitation. Adrian has given me choices I didn't have before. That's the opposite of coercion. And you, Adrian, are you certain you want to tie your life to someone you barely know because of threats from a man you've never met? I'm certain I want to do what's right. This is right. Adrian's voice was steady. I've made harder decisions with less information and worse odds. At least this time, I'm choosing to protect someone rather than sacrifice something. Donnelly looked between them for a long moment, then stood. Very well, I'll perform the ceremony. But mark my words. Marriage has a way of becoming far more complicated than the reasons you entered it. Be prepared for that. We'll manage, Adrian said. Famous last words, Masham, Donnelly muttered, but there was something almost affectionate in his tone. Get out of my office. I need to prepare. Outside, Elena exhaled shakily. That was worse than I expected. He cares in his own terrifying way. Adrian checked his pocket watch. We have 2 hours. You should eat something. I can't. My stomach is in knots. Elena. He waited until she looked at him. We're going to get through this. The wedding, Hargrave, whatever comes next. You're not alone anymore. Her eyes shone suspiciously bright. You keep saying things like that, like you actually mean them. I do mean them. Why? You barely know me. I know enough. Adrian touched her shoulder briefly, a quick gesture of reassurance. You're strong. You're smart. You've survived things that would have broken most people. And you're still standing here, choosing to fight rather than hide. He stepped back. That's all I need to know. Elena wiped at her eyes impatiently. Stop being decent. It's making this harder. Fine. I'll go back to being a cold, tactical bastard immediately after the ceremony. Liar. Adrian smiled. Yeah, probably. The wedding itself was surreal in its simplicity. Just Adrian, Elena, Father Donnelly, and 3 witnesses, Gareth, Mrs. Calloway, and Captain Merrick. No flowers, no music, no pretense that this was anything other than what it was. A legal shield wrapped in vows. Elena walked herself down the short aisle. She wore the white dress with her hair pulled back severely, looking more like a warrior preparing for battle than a bride. It suited her. Adrian watched her approach and felt something shift. Not love, he wasn't naive enough to call it that, but awareness, recognition. This woman was about to tie her fate to his, and despite the tactical reasons, despite the threats and the pressure, she was walking toward him with her chin up and her eyes clear. That took courage he respected deeply. The ceremony was brief. Donnelly kept it traditional but efficient, sensing neither of them wanted prolonged sentimentality. The vows were standard, exchanged with steady voices. The rings, hastily procured from the estate's vault, slid onto fingers that didn't quite tremble. You may kiss the bride, Donnelly said, sounding almost apologetic about the requirement. Adrian looked at Elena. She looked back, something wry and nervous in her expression. Their first kiss. Witnessed, required, utterly devoid of romance. He leaned in, making it brief and chaste, a press of lips that was more agreement than affection. But he felt her hand grip his arm, felt the small exhale of relief when he pulled back. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Donnelly intoned. May you find strength in each other during the trials ahead. And that was it. Married. Legally bound. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for Hargrave to walk into it. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Adrian tried to work, reviewing documents and correspondence, but his attention kept drifting to the window, to the road, to the inevitable approach. Elena found him there around 3, still in her wedding dress because there hadn't been time or inclination to change. She'd removed the formal overlay, leaving just the simpler underlayer, and looked somehow more herself. Anything? She asked. Not yet. He's doing this deliberately, letting us wait, letting the anxiety build. I know. Adrian turned from the window. Are you all right? No, but I will be. She crossed to his desk, picked up the marriage certificate Donnelly had filed. It's done. Legal, witnessed, binding. Her finger traced their signatures. I'm Duchess Thornvale now. How does it feel? Surreal, terrifying, safer than yesterday. She looked up. Thank you for all of this. You've thanked me 3 times today. You can stop. I'll stop when I stop meaning it. Adrian was about to respond when Merrick's voice cut through from the hallway. Your Grace, rider approaching. Fast. They moved together, reaching the courtyard as a single horseman thundered through the main gate. Not Hargrave, just a messenger, mud-splattered and breathing hard. Message for Duke Thornvale. The man gasped, extending a sealed letter. Adrian took it, broke the seal, read quickly. His jaw tightened. What? Elena moved closer. What does it say? Adrian handed her the letter. It was brief, written in elegant script that somehow conveyed smug superiority. Duke Thornvale, I trust this day finds you well. I write to inform you that I shall be arriving at Blackridge Vale this evening rather than tomorrow, as I've concluded my business ahead of schedule. I do hope the accommodation will be adequate. I'm traveling with a small party, Lord and Lady Pemberton, Viscount Hartley, and the Honorable Margaret St. Clair, among others. All individuals of impeccable social standing who have graciously agreed to assist in resolving this unfortunate situation. I look forward to our conversation. Yours, Cassian Hargrave. Elena's hands shook. He's bringing Pemberton. Your cousin, the one who arranged this match. Yeah. Adrian's voice was ice. That bastard. Hartley and St. Clair are major social figures. If they witness this, if Cassian makes his case publicly in front of them. She looked up, eyes wide. Adrian, he's not just coming to retrieve me. He's coming to destroy your reputation if you resist, make you look like the villain who stole another man's betrothed. Adrian was already moving. Gareth, I need Pemberton's correspondence. Every letter related to this marriage arrangement. Now. Your Grace, now. Gareth ran. Merrick appeared at Adrian's elbow. Your Grace, if he's arriving tonight, we have maybe 3 hours. You want me to fortify the gates? Limit access? No. Adrian's mind was racing. That plays into his narrative, makes us look defensive, guilty. We keep everything open, normal. But I want eyes everywhere. If Hargrave or any of his party makes a move, I want to know immediately. Understood. Elena grabbed Adrian's arm. He's going to claim we married in secret to circumvent his prior claim. He'll make it sound scandalous, improper, and with witnesses like Pemberton and the others, then we don't hide it. Adrian turned to face her fully. We own it completely. Yes, we married today. Yes, it was quick. But we're both adults of sound mind who entered into a legal contract witnessed by a priest and estate staff. There's nothing scandalous about that, unless we act like there is. You don't understand how good Cassian is at spinning narratives. He'll twist everything. Let him try. Adrian's voice hardened. I'm done playing defensive. When he arrives, we meet him head on, united, unashamed. And if he wants to make this ugly, we'll show him exactly how ugly it can get when you challenge someone on their own territory. Gareth returned with a stack of letters. Adrian spread them across his desk, scanning quickly. Elena read over his shoulder, her breath catching. Adrian, these letters. Half of what Pemberton told you about me is fabricated, and what he told my family about you. She pointed to one particular line. He told them you were desperate for any match, that you'd overlook anything, ask no questions. He set us both up. Adrian's hands clenched. Made us sound pathetic to each other so we wouldn't communicate. Wouldn't question. Just accept the arrangement and... He stopped. And then what? Why would Pemberton do this? Elena was quiet for a moment, reading further. Then quietly. Debt. Look at this. She pointed to a letter buried in the stack. Pemberton owes Hargrave money. A lot of money. This marriage wasn't about helping me or providing you with a wife. It was about Pemberton paying off his debt by delivering me to Cassian without a public scandal. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Pemberton arranges the marriage, brings Elena to Blackridge under false pretenses, expects Adrian to accept the match without investigation. Then when Hargrave discovers the situation and objects, Adrian, being honorable, would presumably annul rather than fight. Elena gets returned to Hargrave. Pemberton's debt is cleared. Everyone wins except Elena. Except they'd gotten married. Changed the equation entirely. He's going to arrive with Pemberton, who'll vouch for him, Elena said. Who'll support his version of events. Your own cousin will testify that this marriage is invalid somehow, that I was promised elsewhere that— Stop. Adrian's voice cut through her spiraling panic. Listen to me. I don't care what Pemberton says. I don't care what case Hargrave makes. You're my wife now. Legally, finally, completely. And if anyone, family included, thinks they can undo that, they're going to learn otherwise. You can't just watch me. Adrian gathered the letters. These are evidence, proof of conspiracy, fraud, manipulation. Pemberton thought he was being clever. Instead, he's handed us ammunition. Elena stared at the documents, then at Adrian. You're going to go after your own cousin. I'm going to defend my wife from a predator and expose the people who enabled him. Adrian's eyes were cold. Family doesn't get a pass for treachery. The words hung between them. My wife, said with conviction, ownership, protection. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, they're here. Merrick's voice rang across the courtyard. Main gate, multiple carriages. Adrian and Elena moved to the window. Below, a procession was entering Blackridge's grounds. 3 carriages, at least a dozen horses, luggage, servants. An invasion disguised as a social call. The first carriage door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, elegant, with silver-touched dark hair and a smile that probably charmed half the eastern provinces. Cassian Hargrave. Even from a distance, there was something predatory in how he moved, fluid, confident, dangerous. His eyes swept the courtyard, the estate, the windows. Looking for her. Elena stepped back from the glass instinctively. Adrian caught her hand. He doesn't get to make you hide anymore, he said quietly. We go down there together. We face this together. Agreed? Elena's hand trembled in his, but her voice was steady. Agreed. They descended the stairs side by side. As they crossed the courtyard, Adrian felt Elena's tension like a live wire, but she didn't falter, didn't slow, just walked with her head high and her hand firmly in his. Hargrave saw them approaching and his smile widened, a predator spotting prey. Lord Pemberton emerged from the second carriage, looking uncomfortable. The other guests followed, all watching with avid curiosity. Duke Thornvale, Hargrave's voice was warm, friendly, utterly false. What a magnificent estate. Thank you for accommodating our unexpected arrival. Lord Hargrave, Adrian's tone was polite ice. What brings you to Blackridge? Why, a matter of some delicacy. Hargrave's eyes shifted to Elena, and something hungry flashed there. I believe you have something that belongs to me. The courtyard went deadly silent. Adrian felt Elena's hand tighten in his, felt the fear beneath her composure, and felt something inside himself go cold and sharp and absolutely unyielding. I have my wife, he said clearly, deliberately, if that's what you're referring to. Hargrave's smile froze. I beg your pardon? My wife, Adrian repeated, drawing Elena closer. Duchess Elena Thornvale. We were married this morning. So if you've traveled all this way under some misapprehension about her availability, I'm afraid you've wasted your time. The silence shattered like glass. Pemberton went pale. Lady St. Clair gasped theatrically. Viscount Hartley's eyebrows climbed so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. But Hargrave just stood there, his smile frozen in place like a mask that had suddenly become too tight. Married, he repeated slowly, as if testing the word's weight. This morning, you say? Yes. Adrian didn't elaborate, didn't justify, just held Hargrave's gaze with the same expression he'd used discussing crop rotations. Hargrave's eyes slid to Elena, still standing at Adrian's side. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, just stood there with her chin up, her hand visibly clasped in Adrian's, and something in her posture that screamed she wasn't backing down. "Elena, darling," Hargrave's voice dripped false concern. "Surely there's been some misunderstanding, some pressure applied. You can speak freely. These are all friends here. If you've been coerced—" "I haven't been coerced." Elena's voice cut clean through his performance. "I married Adrian willingly, with full awareness and consent. Willingly." Hargrave's smile sharpened, showing teeth. "After knowing him for what, 4 days? 5? Forgive me if I find that somewhat precipitous." "People have married on shorter acquaintance," Adrian said coolly. "It's hardly unprecedented." "No, but it is suspicious." Pemberton finally found his voice, stepping forward with an expression that tried for concern but landed somewhere near panic. "Adrian, when we discussed this arrangement, you assured me you'd approach it thoughtfully, carefully. This hardly seems—" "Careful?" Adrian's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You want to discuss careful, cousin? Perhaps we should start with your correspondence. The letters where you deliberately misrepresented both myself and Lady Viremont to ensure neither of us would communicate directly before the arrangement was finalized." Pemberton's face went from pale to ashen. "I don't know what you're— but don't." The single word cracked like a whip. Adrian released Elena's hand long enough to pull the stack of letters from his jacket. "I have your letters, all of them, including the ones referencing your rather substantial debt to Lord Hargrave." He let that hang in the air for a moment, watching realization dawn across multiple faces. "So before you question my judgment, perhaps explain why you orchestrated this match in the first place." Lady St. Clair made a small noise. Hartley's expression shifted from curious to calculating. These were social sharks. They could smell scandal in the water, and they were reassessing which direction to swim. Hargrave's facade cracked further. "Pemberton's financial difficulties are irrelevant. What matters is that Elena was promised to me long before any arrangement with you was even considered. Our engagement was ended," Elena interrupted, her voice steady despite the tremor Adrian could feel running through her. "By me. Months ago. I told you it was over, Cassian, multiple times. You were upset, emotional. Women often don't." Elena stepped forward, breaking from Adrian's side. A calculated risk that made Adrian's pulse spike, but he held position. This was her fight to claim if she wanted it. "Don't diminish my decision as emotional instability. I ended our engagement because I saw what you were, what you are. And I made the choice, clearly, repeatedly, that I wanted nothing more to do with you." Hargrave's expression flickered, something ugly surfacing beneath the charm. "You made that choice based on lies, misunderstandings. If you'd just listened—" "I listened to a servant's arm breaking because she brought me tea 2 minutes late." Elena's voice was cold now, factual. "I listened to you explain why that was her fault, not yours. I listened to you describe exactly what you'd do to me if I ever embarrassed you publicly." She took another step. "So when I chose to leave, Cassian, it wasn't based on misunderstanding. It was based on perfect clarity about who you actually are beneath all this." She gestured at his elegant clothing, his practiced smile. The courtyard was dead silent. Even the horses seemed to have stopped moving. Hargrave's mask crumbled completely. What replaced it was something colder, harder, the predator done pretending to be civilized. "You think marrying him changes anything? You think a title and a quick ceremony erase what you are to me?" "What I am," Elena said quietly, "is someone else's wife. Legally, finally, completely beyond your reach." "We'll see about that." Hargrave's voice had dropped to something almost conversational, which somehow made it more threatening. "There are ways to contest marriages conducted under questionable circumstances. Fraud, coercion, lack of proper consent." His eyes shifted to Adrian. "And I have witnesses here who can testify to all sorts of irregularities." "Do you?" Adrian asked softly. He looked at Pemberton, at Lady St. Clair, at Hartley. "Because from where I'm standing, you have a man drowning in debt who orchestrated fraud to pay you off, and 2 social observers who just heard my wife describe abuse in detail. He paused. Not exactly the character witnesses I'd rely on for a legal challenge. Hartley cleared his throat. Lord Hargrave, I agreed to accompany you under the impression this was a simple misunderstanding to be cleared up diplomatically. If there are accusations of coercion and abuse, there are no accusations, Hargrave snapped. Just a confused woman being manipulated by— I heard her quite clearly, Lady St. Clair interrupted, her voice sharp. And she sounded neither confused nor manipulated. She sounded like someone describing violence. The older woman's gaze shifted to Elena with something like reassessment. Is it true? About the servant? Elena held her eyes. Yes, I witnessed it myself, among other incidents. St. Clair's mouth thinned. She turned to Hargrave. I think perhaps I was mistaken about the nature of this visit. Lord Hargrave, I'd like to return to the city. You're not going anywhere, Hargrave said flatly. The charm had evaporated entirely now, leaving something raw and dangerous. None of you are leaving until this is resolved. That sounded remarkably like a threat, Adrian observed. His hand had drifted, casually, almost lazily, to rest near the sword at his hip. A decorative piece, supposedly. But Adrian had worn it to war, and everyone present knew it. Lord Hargrave, you're a guest on my estate. I suggest you remember that before issuing orders to other guests. Hargrave's eyes locked on Adrian's hand on the sword, and something shifted in his expression. Calculation, assessment. He was reevaluating, Adrian realized, trying to determine how far he could push before this stopped being social theater and became something else entirely. Your estate, Hargrave said slowly. Your wife, your rules. He smiled. Thin, cold, nothing human in it. Of course. How foolish of me to forget my place. He looked at Elena. But marriages can be annulled, Your Grace, particularly when one party can demonstrate the other committed fraud. And I have evidence that Elena deliberately concealed information from you. Material information that, had you known, would have prevented this union. Elena went very still. Adrian's voice stayed level. What information? She didn't tell you she's barren, did you, darling? Hargrave's smile widened as Elena flinched. The physician I hired examined her last year. Damage from childhood illness. She'll never give you the heirs you need, Duke Thornvale, never continue your bloodline. That seems rather relevant to a marriage contract, doesn't it? The kind of omission that constitutes fraud. The courtyard seemed to tilt. Adrian felt Elena's shock like a physical blow, not at the accusation, but at the public exposure. The weaponization of something private, painful, medical. Is this true? Pemberton asked, seizing on the opening like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. Adrian, if she deliberately concealed— Shut up. Adrian didn't look at his cousin. His eyes stayed locked on Hargrave. Let me make something very clear. My wife's medical history is none of your concern. It's not Pemberton's concern. It's not anyone's concern except ours. He took a step forward. And using it as a weapon? That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of man you actually are. Facts aren't weapons. They're just facts. Hargrave's voice was poisonously reasonable. She lied to you, entrapped you in a marriage under false pretenses. Any court would recognize grounds for annulment. Any court would also recognize that you had a physician examine her without consent, Adrian shot back, which in most jurisdictions constitutes assault. Shall we discuss that in legal terms? Hargrave's expression darkened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, you are. Adrian moved forward again, closing distance. Close enough now that he could see the rage in Hargrave's eyes, the barely controlled fury of someone unused to being denied. You came here expecting me to fold, to be intimidated by your social connections, your threats, your manipulation. Instead, you found a marriage you can't undo and a wife who's done being afraid of you. Another step. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my estate tonight. And you're going to accept that Elena is beyond your reach now, permanently. And if I refuse— Hargrave's hand had drifted to his own sword. Decorative or not, the threat was clear. Then we stop pretending this is a social call and handle it differently. Adrian's voice dropped to something cold and final. Your choice. The moment balanced on a knife's edge, Hargrave's hand on his weapon. Adrian's ready to draw. Everyone watching, waiting to see who'd break first. Merrick's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Your Grace? She'd appeared from nowhere, 6 guards behind her, all armed and alert. Is there a problem? Adrian didn't take his eyes off Hargrave. Lord Hargrave was just deciding whether he's staying for dinner or departing immediately. Departing, Hargrave said finally, his voice brittle. But this isn't over, Thornvale, not by a long shot. Yes, it is. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. It's over because I'm making it over. You have no claim here, no leverage, no power, and if you try to manufacture some, I'll bury you in legal proceedings so complex and expensive you'll wish you'd walked away when you had the chance. Hargrave's jaw worked. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed. Short, harsh, genuine. You think you've won. You think marrying her protects her. He looked at Elena, and the expression on his face made Adrian's blood run cold. You'll learn, both of you. Some things can't be protected by titles or walls or guards. Some things are inevitable. Get out. Adrian's hand closed around his sword hilt. Now, before I forget my manners entirely. Hargrave held his gaze a moment longer, then turned with theatrical precision. Lady St. Clair, Viscount Hartley, shall we depart? I believe we've overstayed our welcome. Indeed, St. Clair said crisply, already moving toward her carriage. Hartley followed without a word. Only Pemberton hesitated, looking between Adrian and Hargrave with the expression of a man watching his life collapse. Cousin, he started. Don't! Adrian's voice was ice. Don't speak to me. Don't write to me. Don't set foot on Blackridge lands again. As of this moment, you're dead to this family. Pemberton opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and practically fled to the carriages. Within 10 minutes, the courtyard was empty, except for dust settling in the twilight and the sound of departing wheels. Adrian stood frozen, watching until the last carriage disappeared beyond the gates. Only then did he release his sword hilt, his hand cramping from how hard he'd been gripping it. Elena was still standing where Hargrave had left her, rigid, pale, her arms wrapped around herself. Elena? Adrian started. Is it true? Her voice was barely audible. What he said about your cousin? About the debt? Yes. So this whole thing, the match, the letters, everything, it was just Pemberton paying off a gambling debt by delivering me to Cassian. Yes. She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. I knew there had to be a reason. I knew it was too convenient, too easy. But I told myself maybe, just maybe, it was legitimate. That someone actually wanted to help me. Her hands clenched. Stupid. Not stupid. Human. Adrian crossed to her carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Elena, what he said about the medical situation. Did you know? Yes. The word came out flat. I've known for years since I was 16. Scarlet, fever, damaged. She trailed off, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. The point is, I should have told you before we married. It's your right to know that I can't, that there won't be heirs. Adrian finished quietly. That's what you're worried about. That I married you expecting children, and now I'll feel cheated. Aren't you? She finally looked at him, and her eyes were devastated. This is a dynasty, Adrian. You need succession. That's the entire point of marriage for people like us. And I can't give you that. So Cassian's right. You have grounds for annulment, fraud through omission. Any court would... Stop. Adrian grabbed her shoulders. Not roughly, but firmly enough to break through the spiral. Listen to me. I don't want an annulment. I don't care about grounds or courts or what Hargrave thinks I should do. But the estate has distant cousins who can inherit if necessary. I have options. What I don't have is another you. He waited until she met his eyes. You think I married you for breeding purposes? Like selecting livestock? Isn't that what noble marriages are? Sometimes. Not this one. Adrian's grip gentled, but didn't release. I married you because you were being hunted by a predator and needed protection. Because you showed courage in circumstances that would have broken most people. Because when I offered you a choice, you chose to stand and fight rather than run and hide. He paused. Those are the reasons. Children never entered the equation. You say that now, but in 5 years, 10 years, when you're watching other families grow and yours is just Elena. He said her name like a command, sharp enough to cut through panic. In 5 or 10 years, if we're both still alive and relatively sane, I'll count that as victory. Everything else is negotiable. She stared at him, searching for the lie, the resentment, the disappointment. He let her look. Let her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, quietly, "Why aren't you angry with me?" "For what?" "Having a medical condition you didn't cause and couldn't prevent." Adrian released her shoulders. "Hargrave wanted me angry, wanted me to feel betrayed so I'd turn on you. That's his play, isolate you, make you vulnerable, then sweep in as the only option." He stepped back. "I'm not giving him that satisfaction." Elena's breath came out shaky. "He meant what he said, about this not being over. He'll try again. Different angle, different strategy, but he'll try." "I know." "You can't just fight him off indefinitely, Adrian. He's patient, obsessive. He'll wait months, years if necessary, and then strike when you're not expecting it. Then we make sure I'm always expecting it." Adrian turned toward the hall. "Come on. We need to debrief Merrick and Gareth, shore up security, and figure out what Hargrave's next move might be." "Just like that? He makes threats and we just continue?" Adrian looked back at her. "What else would we do? Hide? Run? Give him what he wants out of fear?" He shook his head. "That's not how this works. He made his play. It failed. Now we adapt and prepare for the next one. That's how you win long games." Elena stood there for a moment longer, then straightened. The devastation in her eyes hadn't disappeared, but something else was surfacing, something harder, sharper. "All right, then let's prepare." They walked back to the hall together, and Adrian noticed she was no longer keeping distance, moved closer, in fact, like she was finally starting to believe he meant what he said about standing together. It was progress, small, fragile, but real. Merrick was waiting in the strategy room, maps already spread across the table. Gareth was documenting everything that had been said in the courtyard, good instincts, preserving evidence. "Well," Merrick said as they entered, "that was a disaster waiting to happen." "It was a disaster that happened," Adrian corrected. "Now we deal with consequences. Gareth, I need everything you can find on Hargrave's holdings, investments, and social connections. Weak points, vulnerabilities, leverage we can use if he escalates." "Already started." Gareth tapped a stack of documents. "His estate in the East is mortgaged heavily. Cash flow problems, from what I can tell. He's maintaining appearances but bleeding money. That's why he needs Elena." The realization clicked into place. Her family may have financial troubles, but she has a trust, inheritance from her grandmother that she can't access until marriage. Elena nodded slowly. £50,000, held in escrow until I wed. I'd forgotten about it with everything else happening. She looked at Adrian. "If Cassian married me, he'd have access. That's enough to save his estate and then some." "So this isn't just obsession," Merrick said. "It's also greed." "It's both." Elena's voice was bitter. "He wants to own me and solve his money problem simultaneously. Efficient." Adrian studied the maps, thinking. If he's financially desperate, he can't afford a prolonged legal battle. The court costs alone would sink him. He looked at Gareth. "Can we force him into that position? File preventative suits, tie up his assets in litigation?" "Possibly, but it's aggressive. You'd be declaring open warfare." "He declared it first by coming here." Adrian's finger traced routes on the map. "What about social pressure? St. Clair and Hartley heard Elena's accusations. They saw him issue threats. That kind of gossip spreads fast in their circles." "It does," Elena agreed, "but Cassian has his own connections. He'll spin it, claim I'm unstable or vindictive. It'll be his word against mine. Not if we document everything." Adrian pulled out the letters again. "Pemberton's correspondence proves conspiracy. Hargrave's own letter proves he was attempting to intimidate a sitting duke. And we have witnesses to today's confrontation, not just us, but staff, guards, the priest who married us." He looked at Gareth. "Can you compile this into something legally actionable?" "I can try, but, Your Grace, Even with all this, Hargrave could still cause damage. Rumors, social sabotage, undermining your business relationships. He doesn't need to win legally if he can destroy your reputation. Let him try. Adrian's voice was flat. I've survived worse than social gossip. You have, Merrick said quietly. But has she? She nodded at Elena. No offense, Your Grace, but you're new to this level of political warfare. Hargrave will go after you specifically, paint you as a seductress, a liar, someone who trapped a duke through deception. He'll make you the villain. Elena's jaw tightened. I know. I've seen him do it to others. Can you handle that? Merrick asked bluntly. Because it's going to be brutal. I can handle it. Elena's voice was steadier than Adrian expected. I've handled worse from him in private. At least now it's public, and I have allies. Merrick's expression shifted, something like respect. All right then. In that case, here's what I recommend. She pulled the maps closer. We tighten estate security, no unexpected visitors, all correspondence screened. Any travel off grounds gets an armed escort. We assume Hargrave has people watching, reporting back, looking for opportunities. Paranoid, Gareth observed. Prepared, Merrick corrected. There's a difference. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Security rotations, legal strategies, social countermeasures. By the time they finished, night had fully settled over Blackridge, and Adrian's head was pounding from information overload. That's enough for tonight, he finally said. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning. Merrick, make sure the night watch is doubled. Gareth, start drafting those legal documents. We'll review them at first light. They dispersed, leaving Adrian and Elena alone in the strategy room. The silence felt heavier now, weighted with everything that had happened, everything that had been said. You should rest, Adrian said. It's been a hell of a day. So should you. Elena hadn't moved from the table. She was staring at the maps, the documents, the evidence of how complicated their lives had just become. Adrian, I need to ask you something. Ask. This morning, when we got married, did you have any idea it would lead to this? That Cassian would show up, make threats, turn this into open conflict? Adrian considered lying, decided against it. I knew it was possible, probable even, but I didn't know the specifics. So you walked into this fully aware it could explode? Yes. Why? She turned to face him. You keep saying you don't run from threats, that you protect what's yours, but that doesn't fully explain it. You could have sent me away, kept your life simple and controlled. Instead, you chose chaos. She crossed her arms. I need to understand why. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, parsing his own motivations. You really want honesty? Always. All right, honestly? He met her eyes. I've spent the last 5 years building Blackridge into something stable, secure, profitable. I've made every decision based on logic, strategy, and cold calculation. And you know what? It's worked. This estate runs like a machine, but it's also empty, lifeless. I go through days without feeling anything except maybe mild satisfaction when numbers align properly. He paused. Then you arrived, and within 4 days you had disrupted everything, made me angry, protective, challenged in ways I haven't been challenged in years. You made me feel something other than detached competence. He shrugged. So when Hargrave showed up threatening you, threatening what we'd built, yeah, I chose chaos. Because chaos with you feels more alive than stability without you. Elena stared at him. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard, or the most unhinged. Probably both. She laughed, startled, genuine. You're not what I expected at all. You've said that before. It bears repeating. She moved closer, studying his face in the lamplight. Thank you, for today, for all of it, for not backing down when most men would have run screaming. Most men are idiots, Adrian said, echoing his earlier comment. It got another laugh. True. Elena hesitated, then rose up slightly and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, warmer than the ceremony, more personal. Good night, husband. Good night, wife. She left, and Adrian stood alone in the strategy room, his cheek still warm where she'd kissed him. The day had been chaos. Tomorrow would probably be worse, But for the first time in years, Adrian felt something other than controlled detachment. He felt alive, and worth whatever hell Hargrave tried to bring next. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the darkness beyond Blackridge's walls, threats were gathering, plans being made, revenge being plotted. But inside these walls, something else was forming too. Something forged from crisis and choice, and the strange alchemy of two people deciding to stand together instead of apart. Adrian locked the strategy room and headed for his own chambers. Sleep would be elusive tonight, too much adrenaline, too many variables spinning through his mind. But as he passed Elena's door and saw light still showing beneath it, heard the soft sounds of her moving around inside, he felt something settle. Resolve, maybe. Or just certainty about the path he'd chosen. Either way, there was no going back now. The trap had sprung. Hargrave had shown his hand, and tomorrow the real war would begin. Adrian found himself almost looking forward to it. 3 hours later, the scream shattered the night. Adrian was on his feet before he fully woke, grabbing his sword, running toward the sound. Elena's room. The guards were already converging, Merrick shouting orders, chaos erupting in the hallways. He burst through Elena's door to find her backed against the wall, white-faced, trembling, staring at her bed. Laid across the pristine white sheets was a gutted rabbit, fresh, still bleeding. And pinned to its chest with an ornate silver pin was a note in elegant handwriting. "What's mine stays mine. Walls won't stop me. Guards won't save you. You'll learn, soon." Adrian felt ice flood his veins. Hargrave hadn't left, or he'd left people behind. Either way, he'd just violated the sanctity of Blackridge's most protected space, Elena's own bedroom. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe. No one could protect her. Hargrave could reach her whenever he wanted. Merrick appeared at Adrian's shoulder, saw the rabbit, swore viciously. "How the hell did someone get past?" "I don't know." Adrian's voice was deadly calm. "But find out, now. I want every entrance checked, every staff member accounted for, every possible breach identified." He moved to Elena, who was still frozen against the wall. "Elena, look at me." She did, and he saw it. The terror Hargrave had been trying to break through all along. The belief that she'd never be safe, that escape was impossible, that he'd always find a way. "He was here," she whispered, "while we were sleeping, while guards were posted. He was here. I know." Adrian took her hands. They were ice cold. "But he's not here now. And by morning, we'll know exactly how he got in and make sure it never happens again." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." Adrian's grip tightened. "This changes things. He's not just threatening anymore. He's acting, which means we respond differently." "How?" Adrian looked at the mutilated rabbit, at the taunting note, and felt something cold and sharp crystallize in his chest. "We stop playing defense," he said quietly, "and we show him what happens when you threaten a duchess in her own home." Elena searched his face. Whatever she saw there made her breath catch. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes." Adrian met her eyes. "Starting now, this is war." And Hargrave just made his first fatal mistake. "What mistake?" Adrian's smile was predatory. "He proved he's not just obsessed, he's desperate. Desperate enough to risk felony charges breaking into a duke's estate. Desperate enough to threaten a titled woman with physical violence in writing." He picked up the note carefully. "This isn't leverage anymore. This is evidence of criminal intent. And I'm going to make sure everyone, every court, every noble house, every social circle that matters knows exactly what kind of man Cassian Hargrave really is." Elena's expression shifted. The fear didn't disappear, but something else rose alongside it. Something hard and fierce. "You're going to destroy him. Completely." Adrian's voice was ice and iron. "By the time I'm done, Hargrave won't just have lost you. He'll have lost everything." "That's dangerous, for both of us." "I know." Adrian squeezed her hands once more, then released them. "But some things are worth the risk." Outside Elena's window, thunder rumbled across the valley. The storm Hargrave had started was about to become a hurricane, and at its center stood two people who just decided that survival wasn't enough. They were going for total victory. Or total destruction trying. Or total destruction trying. The words still hung in the air when Merrick returned, her face grim. Found the breach. Service entrance on the east wing. Lock was picked, hinges oiled recently. Professional work. Staff? Adrian was already moving, Elena close behind him. All accounted for and asleep when it happened. Whoever did this knew the patrol schedule, knew the blind spots. Merrick's jaw tightened. They'd been watching us. For days, probably. Adrian's mind raced through implications. Which means Hargrave had people in place before he even arrived yesterday. This wasn't improvisation. It was planned. Makes sense. Merrick led them down to the compromised entrance. He expected resistance, came prepared to escalate. The door in question looked innocuous. Heavy oak, iron fixtures, the kind of barrier that should have been secure. Should have been. Adrian crouched, examining the lock mechanism. Clean work, like Merrick said. Someone skilled had spent time here. Can we trace who did it? Elena asked quietly. She'd pulled on a dressing gown but still looked pale, shaken. The violation of her bedroom had cut deep. Maybe, if they left evidence. Merrick was already directing guards to search the perimeter, document everything. But professionals usually don't. Adrian stood, his mind shifting gears. The break-in changed the tactical landscape entirely. This wasn't just social warfare anymore. It was criminal, actionable, prosecutable. Gareth! Adrian's voice carried across the courtyard. His steward appeared within moments, rumpled and half-dressed, but alert. I need you to draft an official complaint to the magistrate. Breaking and entering, trespassing, criminal threatening. Include descriptions of the incident, the evidence we've collected, and a formal request for investigation and charges. Gareth blinked. Against Hargrave? Your Grace, accusing a lord of... I'm not accusing. I'm documenting facts. Someone entered my estate illegally and threatened my wife. I want that on record. Now. It'll create significant social backlash. Going after another noble through legal channels rather than private resolution is exactly what I'm doing. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. We're done with private resolution. Hargrave made this public when he showed up here with witnesses. Now I'm making it legal. Get it drafted by sunrise. Gareth nodded and disappeared. Merrick was watching Adrian with something like approval. Bold move. Most nobles would handle this quietly. Most nobles haven't had someone gut a rabbit in their wife's bed. Adrian turned to Elena. You're not sleeping in that room tonight, or until we've swept every inch of this estate and confirmed it's secure. Where am I supposed to... My chambers, guest wing, anywhere but there. He softened slightly. Your choice, but somewhere defensible. Elena looked like she wanted to argue, then just nodded. Your chambers are probably safest, central location, guards nearby. Adrian tried not to analyze why that suggestion made something warm settle in his chest. Not the time. Fine. Merrick, post guards directly outside. No one enters without explicit permission from either Elena or myself. Understood. They relocated Elena's immediate necessities, clothing, personal items, while guards scrubbed her bedroom and removed the gruesome gift. Adrian's chambers were larger than hers, with a sitting room that could easily accommodate a second sleeping arrangement. He started to suggest that when Elena cut him off. If we're doing this, we do it properly. Same room, same space. She met his eyes. Hargrave's trying to isolate me, make me feel vulnerable and alone. The best counter is showing I'm neither. You want to share? Adrian stopped, recalibrated. She was right, tactically and psychologically. All right, but I can take the sofa if... The bed is large enough for 2 adults to sleep without issue. Elena's tone was matter-of-fact, though he caught the slight tremor beneath it. We're married. This isn't scandalous. I wasn't worried about scandal. I know. You were worried about my comfort. She almost smiled. I appreciate that, but comfort is less important than safety right now. And safety means proximity. Adrian nodded. They arranged the space in silence. Awkward, practical. Neither quite sure how to navigate this new intimacy born from crisis. When Elena finally settled on one side of the bed, Adrian took the other, both of them fully dressed, maintaining careful distance. This is ridiculous, Elena muttered after a few minutes of tense silence. We're lying here like corpses at a funeral." Adrian almost laughed. "You have a better suggestion? Talk to me. Tell me something. Anything except war strategy or Hargrave or threats." She turned to face him. "I need to think about something else, or I'm going to lose my mind." "Fair enough." Adrian thought for a moment. "What do you want to know? Why did you take over Blackridge so young? Most heirs wait until their fathers die or retire. My father did die when I was 19. Adrian stared at the ceiling. "Heart failure, sudden. I went from university student to Duke overnight." That must have been terrifying. It was chaos. The estate was bleeding money. My father was brilliant at many things, but financial management wasn't one of them. I had advisors telling me to sell land, marry wealthy, declare bankruptcy. Instead, I fired half the staff, renegotiated every contract we had, and spent 5 years rebuilding from scratch. He paused. It worked. But it also meant I never really got to be young. Just went from student to Duke without anything in between. Elena was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you're so controlled? So careful about everything?" "Probably. When one wrong decision could have destroyed everything, you learn to think 3 moves ahead." He glanced at her. "Your turn. Tell me something." "Like what?" "Anything. What was your life like before Hargrave?" Elena's expression shuddered slightly. "Normal. Boring even. Minor nobility, small estate, social events that all blurred together. My parents died when I was 17. Carriage accident. After that, it was just me and my aunt, who mostly cared about marrying me off appropriately." She smiled without humor. "Cassian seemed appropriate. Wealthy, titled, charming. By the time I saw beneath the charm, I was already engaged." "How long were you with him before you realized?" 6 months. He hit it well at first. Little controlling things, criticizing my clothing, my friends, my interests. I thought he was just particular. Then the engagement party happened." Her hands clenched. "A servant spilled wine near me. Not on me, just near. Cassian had him dismissed on the spot. I intervened, tried to defend the man. Later, in private, Cassian explained that servants who make mistakes around his things don't deserve employment." She shuddered. The way he said his things while looking at me, that's when I knew. I wasn't a person to him. I was property. Adrian felt cold fury settle in his chest. "How long before you ended it?" "I tried to end it that night. He convinced me I was overreacting. It took 3 more months and several worse incidents before I finally broke the engagement publicly." Her voice dropped. "He didn't take it well." "The threats started then?" "Yes. Letters at first, then showing up places I'd be. Then his people watching my house, following me, making sure I knew I was being monitored." She closed her eyes. "It got so I couldn't go anywhere without feeling hunted. That's when my aunt started looking for marriage prospects. She thought if I wed someone else quickly, Cassian would have to back off. Hence Pemberton's arrangement. Hence your cousin's betrayal, yes." Elena's jaw tightened. "I actually thought I was escaping, thought a cold, distant duke in the north would be better than a charming predator in the east." She looked at Adrian. "Turns out I got something completely different. Disappointed? Terrified, confused, cautiously hopeful." She almost smiled. "But not disappointed." They lapsed into silence, but it was more comfortable now, less tense. Adrian found himself relaxing incrementally, his mind finally quieting enough to consider sleep. "Adrian?" Elena's voice was soft. "Thank you for not making me face this alone." "You're not alone anymore. Get used to it." He felt her hand find his in the darkness between them. Brief contact, quickly withdrawn, but the gesture registered. Connection, trust, partnership. Adrian fell asleep thinking that maybe, just maybe, this disaster of a marriage might become something real. Morning brought chaos of a different kind. Gareth had the legal complaint drafted, documented, and ready for review by the time Adrian emerged from his chambers. Elena appeared shortly after, looking more rested than expected. "This is comprehensive," Adrian said, scanning the pages. "Criminal trespass, breaking and entering, intimidation, threatening violence. You've built a solid case. It's also a declaration of war, Gareth warned. Once this goes to the magistrate, there's no taking it back. Hargrave will retaliate. Good. Let him. Adrian signed the document with sharp, decisive strokes. I want this filed today, and I want copies sent to every major noble house in the region. Transparency. Gareth's eyes widened. Your Grace, that's necessary. Hargrave's power comes from operating in shadows, using social pressure and private threats. We're dragging everything into daylight. Adrian looked up. Make it happen. After Gareth left, Elena studied Adrian with something like awe. You're really doing this, going after him publicly. I told you I would. I know, but I didn't think you meant immediately. I thought we'd strategize longer, build a stronger position first. Hargrave thinks we're reactive, defensive, waiting for his next move. Adrian moved to the window, watching the estate wake up. He's wrong. We're taking the offensive, forcing him to respond to us instead of the other way around. What if he escalates? Then we escalate harder. Adrian's voice was ice. He made a mistake breaking in here, gave us concrete evidence of criminal intent. Every move he makes now can be documented, prosecuted, used against him. He's trapped. Elena joined him at the window. You sound very certain. I am, because I understand something Hargrave doesn't. Power isn't just about money or title. It's about willingness to commit completely to a course of action. He looked at her. He's playing games. We're going to war. There's a difference. A knock interrupted them. Merrick entered, holding a letter. This just arrived. Courier from the magistrate's office. Adrian broke the seal, read quickly, then handed it to Elena. Her expression shifted from curious to stunned. They're opening an investigation? Already? Apparently breaking into a duke's estate carries weight. Adrian's satisfaction was evident. They're sending an investigator tomorrow to document the crime scene and take statements. Merrick looked pleased. That was fast. Usually takes days to get official response. I may have sent a personal note to the magistrate this morning, Adrian admitted. We served together during the border conflicts. He owes me several favors. I called one in. Elena stared at him. You have a magistrate in your debt? I have several important people in my debt. Perks of saving lives during wartime. Adrian took the letter back. Point is, we now have official backing. Hargrave can't dismiss this as private grievance anymore. It's state business. He's going to be furious. Excellent. Adrian's smile was sharp. Angry people make mistakes. I'm counting on it. The investigator arrived the next day. A severe woman named Inspector Caro, who took her job seriously and seemed entirely unimpressed by noble titles. She spent 6 hours examining the compromised entrance, interviewing staff, documenting evidence, and taking formal statements from both Adrian and Elena. This is thorough work, she said finally, reviewing her notes. Professional entry, clear intent to intimidate. Combined with witness testimony about Lord Hargrave's behavior during his visit, she looked up. You have a strong case for prosecution, Your Grace. Will charges be filed? Elena asked. That's not my decision, but I'll be recommending it. Caro's expression softened slightly. Between us, Duchess, I've seen this pattern before. Wealthy men who think status excuses violence. It rarely ends well unless someone stops them decisively. She packed her documentation. You're doing the right thing bringing this forward. After Caro left, Elena seemed to stand straighter. She believed me. She didn't question or doubt or suggest I was exaggerating. Why would she? You told the truth. Adrian was reading through Caro's preliminary report. And she documented physical evidence that supports everything you said. This isn't he said she said anymore. It's documented fact. Cassian won't accept this quietly. I know. Which is why... Adrian was interrupted by Gareth rushing in, holding another letter. His face was pale. Your Grace, then... This just arrived from the eastern provinces. Multiple witnesses have come forward. Adrian took the letter, Elena reading over his shoulder. It was from a solicitor representing 3 former servants of Hargrave's estate. All 3 were willing to testify about abuse, violence, and intimidation they'd witnessed or experienced personally. How did they know to come forward? Elena whispered. I may have sent inquiries in, Gareth admitted. After Your Grace instructed me to investigate Hargrave's background, I contacted servants who'd left his employment, offered legal protection if they had information. These 3 responded. Adrian looked at his steward with newfound respect. That was initiative beyond what I asked for. You said we were going to war, Your Grace. I thought we should gather ammunition. Elena was staring at the letter, her hands trembling. These people, they're risking everything to testify against him. Cassian will destroy them if he can. Not if we protect them first. Adrian was already thinking tactically. Gareth, arrange transport and accommodation here at Blackridge for all 3 witnesses. Safe, secure, comfortable. And get them legal representation, the best we can afford. That's going to be expensive. I don't care. These people are putting themselves in danger to help us. We protect them. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. The witnesses arrived 3 days later, 2 women and 1 man, all looking nervous but determined. Adrian and Elena met with them privately, and what they described made Elena go pale and Adrian's jaw clench until it ached. He broke my wrist when I questioned a menu choice. One woman, Mary, said quietly, showing the still crooked bone. Said I was overstepping my position. The man, Thomas, had scars across his back from a whipping over a minor infraction. The third woman, Sarah, described systematic psychological abuse that left her afraid to speak in Hargrave's presence. Why did you all stay so long? Elena asked gently. Need the wages, Sarah said simply. And he makes it hard to leave. Threatens references, spreads rumors, makes sure no one else will hire you. That ends now, Adrian said firmly. You're all under my protection. He can't touch you here. And when this goes to trial, your testimony will help ensure he faces consequences. Mary looked at Elena with something like understanding. He was going to marry you, wasn't he? That's why you're doing this. He tried to, Elena corrected. I refused. He didn't accept that. No, he wouldn't. Thomas's voice was bitter. Lord Hargrave doesn't understand the word no. After the witnesses were settled in secure quarters, Adrian found Elena on the ramparts staring out at the valley. She didn't turn when he approached. I didn't know, she said quietly. I knew he was cruel, but I didn't realize the extent, how many people he'd hurt, how long he'd been doing it. You couldn't have known. He hid it well. I should have looked harder, asked more questions. Her hands gripped the stone. All those people suffering while I was just trying to escape myself. Elena. Adrian waited until she looked at him. You're not responsible for his cruelty. You're only responsible for what you do now, and right now you're helping bring him to justice. That counts. Does it? Will it actually change anything? Yes. Adrian moved beside her, looking out at the same view. Because every person who stands up to bullies makes it easier for the next person. Every abuser who faces consequences instead of walking free makes the system slightly better. It's slow, imperfect work, but it matters. Elena was quiet for a moment. When did you become so idealistic? I'm not idealistic. I'm practical. Hargrave is a problem. We're solving it. The fact that solving it also helps other people is just efficient resource allocation. She laughed, surprising both of them. You're terrible at hiding your actual goodness behind tactical justifications. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't. But she was smiling now, some of the weight lifting. The break came 2 weeks later, from an unexpected source. Viscount Hartley, who'd witnessed Hargrave's confrontation at Blackridge, sent a private letter requesting a meeting. Adrian was suspicious but agreed, with Merrick present and weapons handy. Hartley arrived alone, looking uncomfortable. Thank you for seeing me, Your Grace. What do you want, Hartley? To apologize and to help. Hartley shifted. I accompanied Hargrave thinking I was mediating a simple misunderstanding. What I witnessed instead, both here and in the weeks since, has made me reconsider my association with him entirely. Adrian studied him. You've learned something. Several things, including testimony from other servants, rumors from his estate about financial desperation, and confirmation that he's been attempting to intimidate your witnesses. Hartley pulled out documents. I've documented everything I could find, dates, names, incidents. If you're building a case against him, this might help. Elena took the documents, scanning quickly. Her eyes widened. This is detailed. Why are you doing this? Hartley met her gaze. Because I have 3 daughters, Duchess, and the thought that a man like Hargrave could target any of them, and society would look the other way because of his title. He shook his head. I can't be part of that. Won't be. This will destroy your social relationship with him, Adrian warned. Possibly others in his circle. I'm aware. I've made peace with it. Hartley stood. Lord Hargrave is a predator hiding behind privilege. Someone needs to stop him. If I can help with that, the social cost is worth paying. After Hartley left, Adrian and Elena reviewed the new evidence. It was damning. Financial records showing mounting debt, correspondence revealing attempts to bribe or threaten witnesses, even suggestions that Hargrave had been planning to kidnap Elena if the marriage confrontation failed. This is enough, Elena breathed. This is actually enough to convict him. It's enough to start. Adrian was already drafting messages. We need to move fast before he realizes how much evidence we've gathered. Gareth, I want these documents submitted to the magistrate immediately, and I want a formal request for Hargrave's arrest on charges of assault, criminal threatening, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. Gareth's hand trembled slightly as he took the papers. Your Grace, once we file this, there's no going back. Hargrave will fight with everything he has. Let him fight. We have evidence, witnesses, and legal standing. He has desperation and declining resources. Adrian's voice was steel. It's time to end this. The arrest warrant was issued 3 days later. News spread through noble circles like wildfire. A duke had brought formal criminal charges against another lord, complete with witness testimony and documented evidence. Unprecedented, scandalous, absolutely riveting for the social elite. Adrian watched reactions carefully. Some nobles condemned him for breaking social protocol. Others quietly expressed support. A few, more than expected, sent letters thanking him for taking a stand. Lady St. Clair was among them. Her letter was brief but pointed. Someone needed to stop that man. I'm glad you had the courage to do it. Social opinion is shifting, Gareth reported during their daily briefing. Not entirely in our favor, but enough to make Hargrave's position untenable. He's being avoided at social gatherings. Business associates are distancing themselves. His creditors are calling in debts. Good. Adrian felt no sympathy. He built his life on intimidation and fear. Now he's experiencing consequences. How's he responding? Erratically, his solicitors are filing motions to dismiss, but they're poorly argued. He's burning through legal representation, already on his 3rd lawyer. Gareth hesitated. Your Grace, there are rumors he's planning something desperate. Let him plan. We're ready for whatever he tries. But Adrian underestimated exactly how desperate Hargrave would become. The attack came at dawn, 4 weeks after the arrest warrant was issued. Not Hargrave himself, he was too smart for that, but hired muscle, 6 men attempting to breach Blackridge's walls simultaneously from different positions. Merrick's enhanced security measures caught them before they made it past the outer perimeter. The fight was brief, brutal, and decisive. 5 attackers were captured. 1 fled. Adrian stood in the courtyard as guards secured the prisoners, his sword still drawn, blood on his hands from where he'd personally intercepted 2 of the intruders. Elena appeared from inside, pale but composed, holding a dagger she'd apparently grabbed from somewhere. Everyone accounted for? Adrian asked Merrick. All staff safe. Guards have minor injuries, but nothing serious. The attackers weren't particularly skilled, hired thugs, not professionals. Merrick kicked one of the captured men. This one's already talking, says Hargrave paid them to grab the Duchess and retrieve what was his. Elena made a sound somewhere between rage and vindication. He actually tried to kidnap me, sent men with weapons to breach your estate and abduct me by force. Yeah. Adrian's voice was ice. He did. That's attempted kidnapping. Multiple counts of assault, conspiracy. Elena was ticking off charges. With witnesses this time. Attackers who will testify to avoid harsher sentences. Hargrave's done, Merrick said with satisfaction. No lawyer can spin this away. No social connections can protect him. He's finished. Adrian looked at the captured attackers, at the evidence being documented, at the absolute gift Hargrave had just handed them in his desperation. Get these men to the magistrate. I want formal statements by noon, and I want additional charges filed against Hargrave before sunset. With pleasure, Your Grace. As the prisoners were hauled away and the estate returned to careful order, Adrian found Elena still holding her dagger, staring at the gates where the attack had come from. "I can't believe he actually did it," she said quietly. "I thought he'd try legal maneuvers, social pressure, maybe more psychological games. But an actual armed assault? He's cornered, desperate. Everything he built is collapsing." Adrian cleaned his sword methodically. Desperate people make catastrophic decisions. This was his. He wanted to kidnap me, drag me back east, probably force a marriage somehow, or worse. She shuddered. "If your security hadn't caught them, it did catch them. You're safe. And now Hargrave has guaranteed his own destruction." Adrian sheathed his sword. "This is over, Elena. Maybe not legally finalized yet, but practically, he's done. No recovery from this." She turned to look at him, something breaking in her expression. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion from weeks of sustained tension finally releasing. "It's really over? It's really over." Elena's breath hitched. Then, to Adrian's surprise, she closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him, tight, desperate, grateful. He froze for a second, then returned the embrace, feeling her trembling against him. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder, "for standing with me, for not backing down, for making this fight when you could have just sent me away. You already thanked me. I'll thank you every day for the rest of our lives if I want to." Adrian smiled against her hair. Fair enough. They stood there in the aftermath of violence, holding each other in the gray morning light, and Adrian felt something fundamental shift. This wasn't strategy anymore, wasn't tactical alliance or political marriage. This was real, messy, complicated, forged in crisis, but genuine nonetheless. "We should go inside," he said finally. "Get cleaned up, file the additional charges, make sure this is documented thoroughly." Always practical. But Elena was smiling as she pulled back. Someone has to be. Inside, Gareth was already drafting new legal documents. Inspector Caro had been summoned and was on her way. Everything was moving fast now, momentum building toward inevitable conclusion. By the time the sun fully rose over Blackridge, formal charges had been filed. 6 attackers in custody, all willing to testify against Hargrave in exchange for reduced sentences. Physical evidence of attempted kidnapping. Documented chain of payment linking the attack directly to Hargrave's dwindling finances. It was, as Merrick had said, finished. 3 days later, news arrived that Cassian Hargrave had been arrested at his eastern estate. He'd attempted to flee but been caught at the border. Now he sat in a magistrate's cell awaiting trial, his assets frozen and his social standing obliterated. Adrian read the report aloud to Elena. She listened in silence, then walked to the window of their chambers now, shared by genuine choice rather than crisis necessity. "I should feel triumphant," she said quietly, "or vindicated, or something dramatic." "What do you feel?" "Tired, relieved, sad for everyone he hurt before we stopped him." She turned, "and grateful. So grateful I found someone who believed me enough to fight this hard." Adrian crossed to her. "You fought too. Don't diminish your part in this." "I testified, stood firm, didn't back down. But you—" She shook her head. "You went to war for me, Adrian, without hesitation, without calculation of cost. Just decided I was worth protecting and made it happen." "You are worth protecting. That was never in question." Elena reached up, touching his face gently. "When did this stop being just strategy for you?" Adrian considered lying, decided against it. "Probably around the time you kissed me on the cheek and called me husband like you meant it." "That was weeks ago." "Yeah, I know." She smiled, real, warm, reaching her eyes. "Good, because it stopped being strategy for me around the same time." "What is it now?" "I don't know yet, but it's real, and it's ours, and that's enough for now." Adrian pulled her close, and this time the kiss wasn't strategic or required or witnessed. It was just theirs, real and imperfect and earned through fire. Outside their window, Blackridge stretched across the northern valley, secure and safe and no longer under siege. The war was over. They'd won. And somewhere in the aftermath, amid legal documents and testimony and justice finally being served, Two people who'd started as strangers had become something far more dangerous. They'd become partners who trusted each other completely. That was power no threat could touch. That was power no threat could touch. The trial began 6 weeks later in the grand courthouse of the regional capital. Adrian had expected a spectacle. Nobles loved drama, but the reality exceeded even his cynical predictions. The gallery was packed with lords and ladies who'd traveled from across the country, all pretending they were there out of civic duty rather than morbid curiosity. Elena sat beside Adrian in the front row, her posture rigid but her expression calm. She'd spent the past weeks preparing her testimony with Inspector Caro, reviewing evidence, steeling herself for what was coming. Now, watching Hargrave being led into the courtroom in chains, she showed no visible reaction, but Adrian felt her hand find his beneath the bench, gripping tight. Hargrave looked diminished. His clothes were still expensive, but wrinkled, his hair less perfectly styled, his face showing the strain of 6 weeks in custody. But his eyes, those were the same. Cold, calculating, filled with rage barely contained. He looked directly at Elena as he was seated. She looked back, unflinching. The judge, Lord Chancellor Pembroke, a veteran jurist known for harsh sentences and zero tolerance for noble privilege, called the court to order. Lord Cassian Hargrave, you stand accused of multiple serious crimes: assault, criminal threatening, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, attempted kidnapping. How do you plead? Where's Chiri Baistum? Hargrave's lawyer, a nervous man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. My client maintains these charges are fabricated by individuals with personal vendettas. Save it for your defense, Pembroke interrupted. Prosecution, present your opening statement. The prosecutor was a sharp woman named Harriet Crane, who'd built her career dismantling the legal protections wealthy criminals hid behind. She stood, surveyed the courtroom, and began methodically laying out the case. Evidence of abuse dating back years. Testimony from servants who'd witnessed or experienced Hargrave's violence. Documentation of the break-in at Blackridge. The gutted rabbit and threatening note. Witness statements from the captured attackers admitting Hargrave had hired them for kidnapping. Financial records showing payment trails. It was devastating, comprehensive, irrefutable. Hargrave's lawyer tried to object repeatedly, but Pembroke overruled him almost every time. The evidence was solid, properly obtained, and presented with precision that left little room for legal maneuvering. Then came witness testimony. Mary went first, describing her broken wrist with clinical detail. Thomas showed his scars. Sarah spoke about psychological abuse so systematic it had left her unable to work for months after leaving Hargrave's employ. Each testimony built on the last, creating a portrait of sustained cruelty. Hargrave's lawyer tried to discredit them, claimed they were paid off, bitter about termination, unreliable. But under cross-examination, each witness held firm. Their stories were consistent, detailed, backed by medical records and corroborating evidence. The courtroom was silent except for occasional gasps or whispers. Even the nobles who'd come for entertainment looked uncomfortable. Then Elena was called. She stood smoothly, walked to the witness stand with her head high. Adrian watched her take the oath, settle into the chair, and meet Crane's eyes with steady composure. Duchess Thornvale, please describe your relationship with the accused. Elena's voice was clear, measured. We were engaged briefly. I ended the engagement when I realized Lord Hargrave's treatment of me and others around him constituted abuse. Can you be specific about what you witnessed? Yes. Elena took a breath. The incident that made me end the engagement occurred at a party. A servant spilled wine near me. Not on me, just near. Lord Hargrave had him immediately terminated. When I objected, defended the servant, Hargrave took me aside and explained in detail that anyone who made mistakes around his property, referring to me, deserved punishment. Her hands clenched. That's when I understood I wasn't a person to him. I was an object he intended to control completely. What happened when you tried to end the relationship? He refused to accept it, sent letters insisting I was confused, emotional, making a mistake. When I didn't respond, he began showing up places I would be, having people watch my home, making sure I knew I was being monitored. Elena's voice stayed steady despite the tremor Adrian could see running through her. The threats escalated. He told me explicitly that no one would want what was left of me if I continued to resist, that I belonged to him regardless of what I wanted. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Pembroke banged his gavel. "Order," Crane continued. "Did these threats stop when you became engaged to Duke Thornvale?" "No. If anything, they intensified. Lord Hargrave arrived at Blackridge demanding I be returned to him. When Duke Thornvale refused, Hargrave made public accusations designed to humiliate and isolate me." Elena looked directly at Hargrave. "Then came the break-in. Someone entered my bedroom while I slept and left a mutilated animal with a threatening note. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe. He could reach me whenever he wanted. And the final incident? The attempted kidnapping? 6 armed men attempted to breach Blackridge's defenses at dawn. They were captured before reaching the main house, but their stated objective, testified to by the attackers themselves, was to retrieve what belonged to Lord Hargrave. Elena's voice hardened. "Meaning me. He actually sent people to abduct me by force from my own home." The courtroom erupted. Pembroke had to bang his gavel repeatedly to restore order. Hargrave's lawyer stood for cross-examination, looking like he'd rather face a firing squad. "Duchess Thornvale, isn't it true you married Duke Thornvale extremely quickly, within days of arriving at his estate?" "Yes." "Doesn't that suggest desperation? Perhaps even manipulation on your part to secure a powerful protector?" Elena's expression didn't change. "I married quickly because I needed legal protection from a man who'd been stalking and threatening me for months. Duke Thornvale offered that protection. I accepted gratefully." "Ba min pasó si," she paused. "But to suggest I manipulated him is absurd. He knew exactly what he was agreeing to, a marriage of convenience designed to keep me safe. There was no deception." "Your Grace, several witnesses testified that Lord Hargrave paid for medical examinations during your previous engagement. Were you aware of this?" "I was aware he'd insisted on a physician's visit, yes. I was not aware he'd done so without my full consent or that he'd kept detailed records." Elena's voice went cold. "Having a physician examine someone without their knowledge or permission is assault. Are you actually trying to use that as evidence in his favor?" The lawyer backtracked quickly. "No, I'm simply establishing—" "You're establishing that my client committed medical assault," Crane interrupted. "Please, continue." The cross-examination fell apart after that. Every question Hargrave's lawyer asked either reinforced Elena's credibility or exposed another aspect of Hargrave's controlling behavior. Within 20 minutes, he gave up and sat down. Adrian was called next. His testimony was more tactical, describing Pemberton's fraud, the evidence of conspiracy, the break-in's security implications, and the attack that had resulted in 6 arrests. He spoke clinically, presenting facts without emotion, but the cumulative effect was damning. Under cross-examination, Hargrave's lawyer tried a different approach. "Duke Thornvale, isn't it true you have significant military experience?" "Yes." "And you personally fought off 2 of the attackers during the attempted breach?" "Yes." "So you're a trained combatant, skilled with weapons. Some might even say dangerous." Adrian saw where this was going. "I'm capable of defending my home and family, yes." "Given that capability, is it possible you overreacted to Lord Hargrave's visit, perceived threats where none existed? Perhaps even provoked confrontation to justify your hasty marriage?" "No." Adrian's voice was ice. "Lord Hargrave showed up at my estate with witnesses, demanded my wife be returned to him, made public accusations, and when that failed, arranged a criminal break-in and later an armed kidnapping attempt. None of that is perception. All of it is documented fact. If anything, I underreacted by pursuing legal channels rather than handling it more directly." The implied threat hung in the air. Pembroke's mouth twitched like he was suppressing a smile. "No further questions," Hargrave's lawyer muttered. The prosecution rested after 2 more days of evidence. Hargrave's defense was anemic. Character witnesses who clearly hadn't been briefed on the evidence against him. Legal arguments that fell flat. Attempts to paint Elena as manipulative that backfired spectacularly when stacked against testimony from multiple abuse victims. Finally, Hargrave himself took the stand. It was a mistake. Adrian saw it immediately. Crane saw it. Even Pembroke looked like he was watching someone walk into a trap. Hargrave's lawyer tried to keep it simple, just deny everything, express shock at the accusations, maintain innocence. But Hargrave couldn't help himself. "These charges are absurd," he said, his voice dripping contempt. "I'm being persecuted for trying to retrieve my lawful property." "Property?" Crane pounced. "You're referring to Duchess Thornvale as property?" "She was my fiancée. We had an agreement she terminated, legally, months before meeting Duke Thornvale." She was confused, influenced by what, Lord Hargrave? Her own judgment? Her ability to recognize abuse when she experienced it? "I never abused her." Hargrave's composure was cracking. "I provided for her, protected her. She was under my care." "You keep using possessive language," Crane observed. "She belonged to you, your property, your care. Do you not see women as independent human beings?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean when you told her no one would want what was left of her if she continued resisting your advances?" Hargrave's face flushed. "That was taken out of context. What context makes threatening physical harm acceptable?" "I never threatened physical harm." "You broke a servant's arm for serving tea incorrectly. You had a stable boy whipped. Multiple witnesses testified to systematic violence in your household." Crane's voice rose. "And you expect this court to believe you never threatened the woman you claim to have cared for?" "I loved her," Hargrave was shouting now, control completely gone. "Everything I did was to protect her from making mistakes. She needed guidance, structure, someone to make decisions for her because she clearly couldn't be trusted to..." He stopped, realizing what he'd just said. The courtroom was dead silent. "Someone to make decisions for her," Crane repeated slowly. "Because she couldn't be trusted. That's your definition of love, Lord Hargrave?" Hargrave's mouth opened, closed. His lawyer looked ready to faint. "No further questions," Crane said quietly. The defense rested shortly after. Closing arguments were scheduled for the next day, but everyone in the courtroom knew it was over. Hargrave had convicted himself from the witness stand. That night, back at Black Ridge, Elena stood at the window of their chambers watching storm clouds gather over the valley. "He actually said it," she murmured, out loud in open court, "that I needed someone to make decisions for me, that I was property to be retrieved." "He did." Adrian joined her at the window, and every noble in that courtroom heard it. There's no spinning that away. "Do you think Pembroke will actually convict? Really convict? Not just a slap on the wrist?" "I think Pembroke is going to throw the book at him." Adrian's voice was certain. "He hates noble privilege being used to excuse violence." Hargrave handed him the perfect case to make an example. Elena leaned against him, exhausted. "It should feel better than this. We won. The evidence is overwhelming. Cassian destroyed himself up there. But I just feel tired." "That's normal. You've been fighting for months. Now that the threat's finally contained, your body's catching up." Adrian wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Give it time. The relief will come." "Will it? Or will I just spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next threat?" "Probably a little of both," Adrian said honestly. "Trauma doesn't just evaporate because justice gets served, but it does get easier, especially when you're not facing it alone." She turned to look at him. "You know that from experience?" "Yeah. War trauma doesn't just disappear when the war ends. You learn to live with it, manage it. Eventually it becomes background noise instead of the main event." He touched her face gently. "And you have help. You're not doing this alone. Promise?" "Promise." They stood there as rain began to fall, washing the valley clean, and Elena let herself believe that maybe, finally, she was actually safe. The verdict came 3 days later. The courtroom was even more packed than before. Word had spread that Pembroke was going to make a statement. Adrian and Elena sat in their usual positions, hands clasped beneath the bench, waiting. Pembroke entered, took his seat, and surveyed the assembled crowd with obvious disdain. "This case has been a disgrace," he said bluntly. "Not because of the legal proceedings, which were conducted properly, but because of what it represents. A systematic failure of our social systems to protect vulnerable individuals from predators hiding behind titles and wealth. The gallery stirred uncomfortably. Lord Cassian Hargrave stands convicted by his own testimony of believing women are property to be controlled, of viewing violence as acceptable when it serves his purposes, of prioritizing his own desires over the fundamental rights and dignity of others. Pembroke's voice was steel. This court finds the defendant guilty on all charges: assault, criminal threatening, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, attempted kidnapping. Hargrave jerked like he'd been struck. His lawyer started to stand, then thought better of it. Sentencing, Pembroke continued, will reflect the severity of these crimes and the defendant's complete lack of remorse. Lord Hargrave, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years imprisonment, with no possibility of early release. Additionally, all titles and privileges associated with your noble status are revoked. Your estate and holdings will be liquidated, with proceeds distributed to your victims as restitution. The courtroom erupted. 15 years, titles revoked, complete social annihilation. Pembroke banged his gavel. Furthermore, I am recommending to Parliament that laws regarding domestic abuse and stalking be strengthened to prevent similar cases. The current system clearly failed to protect Duchess Thornvale and numerous others from sustained harassment and violence. That ends today. He looked directly at Elena. Duchess, you showed remarkable courage bringing this case forward. Many victims remain silent because they fear the social and legal repercussions of challenging powerful men. You chose to fight instead. That decision likely saved lives beyond your own. Elena's eyes shone with unshed tears. She nodded, unable to speak. Hargrave was being led away, still looking stunned. As he passed their row, he turned his head toward Elena one last time. Whatever he saw in her expression made his face contort with rage. "This isn't over," he started. "Yes, it is," Adrian said quietly but clearly. 15 years, Lord Hargrave. By the time you're released, we'll have built a life so far beyond your reach, you won't even be a memory. Enjoy your cell. Guards hauled Hargrave away, his protests fading down the corridor. The gallery slowly emptied, people filing out in clusters, already gossiping about what they'd witnessed. Lady St. Clair stopped by Adrian and Elena's bench. "That was justice," she said simply. "Long overdue, but justice nonetheless. Duchess, if you ever need anything, support, testimony, assistance, you have it." Other nobles approached with similar sentiments. Not all. Some clearly disapproved of the public nature of the proceedings, the harsh sentence, the social precedent being set. But enough. More than enough to make Elena's eyes widen with surprise. "I didn't expect this," she murmured to Adrian as they finally left the courthouse. "Support from people I've never met. Strangers thanking me for testimony that exposed my worst moments." "You gave them permission to speak up too," Adrian said. "Every victim who stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them, no one would care, they just watched a court publicly validate your experience and punish your abuser. That matters. That changes things." Outside, rain had cleared, leaving the city washed clean and sharp in afternoon sunlight. Their carriage waited, but Elena paused before entering. "I want to visit the witnesses. Mary, Thomas, Sarah. Thank them properly. Now, while the verdict is fresh. They need to know their testimony mattered, that they helped end this." Adrian signaled the driver for a route change. They found the three witnesses at a modest inn where they'd been staying during the trial. When Elena knocked, Mary answered, saw her expression, and immediately broke into tears. "He's actually convicted? Really convicted?" 15 years, titles revoked, everything. Elena embraced her. "Because you were brave enough to testify. All of you." Thomas and Sarah joined them, and for several minutes it was just tears and relief and the profound catharsis of justice actually being served. Adrian stayed back, watching Elena with something approaching awe. She'd been terrified going into this trial. Now she was comforting others, giving them the validation they needed. She'd become stronger than the thing that tried to break her. That was victory in its purest form. Before they left, Sarah gripped Elena's hands. "What you did, standing up there telling your story despite everything, you saved more than just yourself. You know that, right? I had help, a lot of help. But you made the choice to fight." Sarah's smile was tremulous but genuine. That's what mattered. Thank you for that. The ride back to Blackridge was quiet, both of them processing. As they crossed into familiar territory, Elena finally broke the silence. I need to tell you something. Adrian looked over. All right. When I came here, I was running, desperate, looking for any escape from Cassian's obsession. I didn't expect protection. I certainly didn't expect partnership. She turned to face him. And I absolutely didn't expect to fall in love with the man who offered both. Adrian's breath caught. Elena, let me finish. She was smiling now, nervous but certain. I know this started as strategy, convenience, mutual benefit, but somewhere between the wedding and the trial and every moment in between, it became real for me. You became real. This life we're building became something I actually want, not just something I'm accepting as better than the alternative. She took his hand. I love you, Adrian. Messy, complicated, probably too soon to say it, but I do. And I needed you to know that. Adrian stared at her, parsing the confession, analyzing his own response. Then he stopped analyzing and just felt it, the warmth, the certainty, the rightness of what she'd just said. It's not too soon, he said quietly, and it's not one-sided. I've been calling you my wife for weeks, but somewhere along the way it stopped being a legal technicality and became just truth. He squeezed her hand. I love you too. Didn't plan to, didn't expect to, but I do. She laughed, relief and joy mixing. We're terrible at this, the romance part. Probably. We're much better at tactical warfare and legal strategy. True. But maybe we can learn the romance part too. We've got time now. We do. Adrian pulled her closer. All the time in the world. No more threats, no more crisis. Just us figuring out what normal actually looks like. Elena kissed him, long, thorough, celebratory. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, she was grinning. I think I like this part. The after part, where we actually get to live instead of just survive. Me too. They arrived at Blackridge as sunset painted the valley in gold and crimson. Staff greeted them with barely suppressed excitement. News of the verdict had already reached the estate via messenger. Gareth looked particularly pleased. Merrick actually smiled, and Mrs. Calloway had apparently started preparing a celebratory dinner without waiting for confirmation. They're happy for you, Adrian observed as they walked through the main hall. They're happy the threat is gone, Elena corrected. Everyone can relax now. Maybe both. That night, after dinner and toasts and too much wine, Adrian and Elena stood on the ramparts looking out at their estate, their home, their future, stretching out ahead without the shadow of Hargrave darkening it. What do we do now? Elena asked. Genuinely, what does life look like when we're not in crisis mode? Adrian considered. We run the estate, host social events we've been avoiding, maybe travel. You've never seen the southern provinces. We figure out how to be married without external threats forcing proximity. He paused. We build a life deliberately instead of just reacting to disasters. That sounds terrifyingly normal. It does, doesn't it? Elena laughed. I'm going to be terrible at normal. I've been in survival mode so long I don't know what else looks like. Then we'll be terrible at it together. Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist. And when normal gets boring, we'll find new challenges. Just preferably ones that don't involve death threats. Deal. She leaned into him, comfortable and safe and home. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for everything, for being the person who chose to stand with me when you could have walked away. For fighting a battle that wasn't yours until you made it yours. For, her voice caught, for seeing me as worth protecting when I'd almost stopped believing that myself. You were always worth it. Adrian's voice was fierce. From the moment you stepped off that carriage looking like you were ready to fight the world alone, you were worth it. I just made sure you didn't have to fight alone anymore. They stood there as stars emerged overhead, two people who'd found each other in crisis and built something real from the wreckage. Blackridge stretched below them, secure and peaceful, no longer a fortress under siege, but a home that had weathered its storm. In the valley beyond, life continued. Seasons would change, challenges would come, but they'd face them together now, partners in truth, not just strategy. 6 months later, Elena stood in the great hall surrounded by women she'd never met 6 months ago. Former victims of abuse who'd heard about Hargrave's conviction and reached out, looking for guidance, support, validation. What had started as informal conversations had grown into something larger, a network, a resource, a community. "You're building something important here," Lady St. Clair observed, watching Elena speak with a young woman who'd just left a violent situation. "Not just for yourself, for everyone these predators target." "I'm just sharing what I learned," Elena said. "That there's power in speaking up, in refusing to be silent, in finding people who'll stand with you instead of against you. That's not just anything. That's revolutionary." St. Clair smiled. "Your husband must be proud." "He is. Possibly more proud of this than the trial, actually." Elena glanced across the hall where Adrian was deep in conversation with a magistrate about proposed legal reforms. "He likes fixing broken systems. This qualifies." "You make a formidable team." "We do," Elena agreed, and felt the truth of it settle warm in her chest. That evening, after the guests had departed and the hall had quieted, Adrian found Elena in their chambers reviewing correspondence. Letters from women across the country asking for advice, support, connection. "You're going to need staff," he observed. "Maybe an actual office. This is getting too big for informal coordination. Are you offering estate resources for my Revolutionary Women's Network?" Elena's tone was teasing. "I'm offering support for my wife's work that I happen to think is more important than most of what nobles spend money on. So, yes." Adrian pulled up a chair beside her. "What do you need?" Elena looked at him, really looked, seeing the man who'd stood beside her through hell and come out the other side still choosing to stand. "You. Just you. Everything else we can figure out. You have me. You know that." "I do." She set aside the letters. "Strange, isn't it? 6 months ago, I was running from a monster. Now I'm building something that might actually help stop other monsters. How did that happen?" "You decided survival wasn't enough." Adrian took her hand. "You chose to turn your experience into ammunition for changing things. That's how." "We chose," Elena corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this alone." "Maybe not, but you would have tried. That's who you are." He kissed her knuckles. "I just made sure you had backup." They sat together as night deepened over Blackridge, planning expansions and reforms and futures that stretched beyond their own small corner of the world. What had started as desperate strategy had become genuine partnership. What had begun in crisis had evolved into purpose. And somewhere in the transformation, two people who'd barely known each other had built something neither had expected to find. Not just safety, not just justice, but home. Real, complicated, imperfect, and absolutely worth every battle they'd fought to protect it. Years later, when people asked Elena about those early months, the trial, the verdict, the aftermath, she would smile and say it was the hardest thing she'd ever done. But she'd also say it was the moment she stopped being someone who survived and became someone who lived. And she'd look at Adrian, standing beside her as always, and know that some decisions, even ones made in desperation, turn out to be exactly right. Blackridge Vale stood eternal on its northern cliffs, no longer just a duke's estate, but a sanctuary for those who needed proof that monsters could be defeated and futures could be rebuilt. And at its heart, two people who'd chosen each other when choice seemed impossible continued choosing each other every day after. That was the real victory. Not the verdict or the sentence or the public vindication, but the daily, deliberate choice to stand together and build something worth protecting. Power wasn't just about titles or wealth or weapons. Power was two people deciding that together they were unstoppable. And they were right.